Have you ever been so alone, so deep in the middle of nowhere that the silence itself starts to sound like something else? Something watching? That's a feeling I got to know all too well one night in rural Kansas, a night that started out like any other but ended with me questioning everything. I thought I knew about the world and what might be hiding just beyond the edge of our sight. I grew up in a small town, the kind of place where everyone knows your name and probably your business too. Our house was on the outskirts, right up against endless fields of corn. For me, that cornfield was just part of the landscape, as normal as the sunrise. It was my backyard, my playground, and on summer nights the source of a constant, gentle rustling sound as the wind moved through the stalks. I'd spent countless hours exploring its dusty rows, but I'd never felt anything but peace there, until that one night in late August. It was just after 10 o'clock. The air was thick and heavy, that classic Kansas summer humidity that makes you feel like you're breathing water. The sky was clear, a deep, inky black velvet, dotted with a million tiny, brilliant stars. I was sitting on my back porch, just soaking in the quiet. My parents had already gone to bed, and the only light was a single dim bulb above the back door, casting long, dancing shadows into the yard. That's when I first heard it. It wasn't the usual sound of the wind or the chirping of crickets. This was different, a low, almost imperceptible hum. It was so faint at first that I thought I was imagining it. Maybe the sound of a distant tractor or the refrigerator compressor kicking on inside. I tilted my head, straining to hear. The hum grew steadily, not in volume, but in presence. It felt like it was filling the space around me, a vibration I could feel deep in my chest. It was a clean, pure tone, unlike any machine I'd ever heard. It had no rhythm, no fluctuation, just a constant, unnerving thrum. Curiosity got the better of me. I stood up and walked to the edge of the porch, peering out into the darkness. The cornfield started just a few yards from where our lawn ended. In the faint moonlight, the stalks looked like a solid wall, a dark, impenetrable fortress. The humming seemed to be coming from somewhere deep inside it. A part of my brain, the logical part, was screaming at me to go back inside and lock the door. This wasn't right. But another, more foolish part of me needed to know. I grabbed a heavy Maglite flashlight from a hook by the door and stepped off the porch. My bare feet sank slightly into the cool, damp grass. With every step I took towards the cornfield, the humming sensation intensified. It wasn't just in my ears anymore. It was a physical pressure, a weight in the air that made my head feel fuzzy. I paused at the edge of the field, the first row of corn stalks looming over me like silent sentinels. The air here was dead still, not a single leaf stirring, which made the humming sound even more unnatural. Taking a deep breath, I switched on the flashlight. The powerful beam cut a bright, white tunnel into the darkness, illuminating a new path between the rows. Dust motes danced in the light like tiny fairies. I stepped in. The moment I was inside, the sounds of the night, the crickets, the distant highway vanished completely. It was as if I had stepped into a soundproof room. All that remained was the all-encompassing hum. I walked deeper, my heart starting to pound against my ribs. The beam of my flashlight bounced ahead, revealing more of the same. Endless rows of tall, green stalks and dry, cracked earth. The smell was intense, the sweet, dusty scent of corn mixed with damp soil. But underneath it, there was something else. A faint, almost sterile smell, like ozone after a lightning strike. It was clean and metallic, and it made the hairs on my arms stand up. My rational mind was racing, trying to find an explanation. A downed power line, some kind of experimental farm equipment? But nothing made sense. The deeper I went, the more the feeling of being watched grew. I kept sweeping the flashlight beam from side to side, half expecting to see a pair of glowing eyes staring back at me. A coyote, maybe a deer, but there was nothing, just the corn and the hum. After what felt like an eternity, but was probably only a few minutes, I saw it. The light. It wasn't my flashlight. Ahead of me, maybe 50 yards down the row, a soft, pulsating glow was filtering through the stalks. It was a gentle, bluish-white light, and it was moving in perfect time with the hum. Glow. Glow. My breath caught in my throat. This was it. This was the source. My legs felt like lead, but I forced myself to keep moving, one slow, deliberate step at a time. I turned off my flashlight, plunging myself into near total darkness, save for the eerie glow ahead. As I got closer, the details became clearer. The light was coming from a clearing. A perfect circle had been pressed down in the corn, the stalks bent flat against the ground, spiraling out from a central point. And in the middle of that circle, hovering just a few feet above the ground, was a dark, metallic object. It was smooth, seamless, and perfectly silent except for the low hum that now vibrated through the very ground beneath my feet. I burst out of the cornfield and sprinted across the lawn, not stopping until I slammed the back door shut behind me, fumbling with the lock until it clicked into place. I collapsed against the door, gasping for air, my body shaking uncontrollably. The humming was gone. The only sound was my own ragged breathing and the frantic pounding of my heart. I crawled to the window and peered out. The night was quiet again. The crickets were chirping. The cornfield was just a dark, silent mass under the moonlight. There was no glow, no ship, no impossibly tall figure. It was as if nothing had ever happened. I never told anyone what I saw that night. Who would have believed me? They'd say it was a dream or that I'd imagined it. But I know what I saw. I have the scratches on my arms and the memory burned into my mind to prove it. I never went into that cornfield at night again. Sometimes when the air is still and the sky is clear, I think I can almost hear a faint hum on the edge of hearing, and I immediately go inside and lock the doors. I don't know what that thing was or what it wanted. All I know is that we are not alone, and that some things are better left undiscovered in the darkness. I never used to believe in monsters, ghosts, aliens, cryptids. They were just stories, fun little campfire tales to give you a shiver before you went to sleep. Growing up here in rural Wisconsin, you hear your fair share of them. But living out here, surrounded by miles of dense forest and quiet farmland, you learn that some stories feel a little too real. For me, it all started last fall, just as the leaves were turning that brilliant, fiery red. I inherited my grandpa's old farm a few years back. It's remote, way off the beaten path, and that's just how I like it. The nearest neighbor is a couple of miles down a winding dirt road. The quiet is usually a comfort. Thanks for listening to our story. If you've had a similar experience, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. It feels like something is listening. To like and subscribe for more adventures into the unknown. I've lived around coyotes and wolves my whole life. I know their calls like the back of my hand. This was different. It was deeper, more guttural, and it had a strange, almost human-like quality to it. It wasn't the lonely cry of a wolf. It sounded angry. It sounded like a warning. The first time I heard it, the hairs on my arms stood straight up. My dog, a usually fearless German shepherd named Gus, just whimpered and pressed himself against my legs, refusing to go outside. The next few weeks, things got stranger. My chickens, usually clucking away happily, were always huddled together, silent and terrified. The deer, which normally graze peacefully at the edge of the woods, were gone. The entire forest seemed to be holding its breath. Then came the morning I found the gate. It's a heavy, wrought iron gate at the end of my long driveway, a solid thing that's been there for 50 years. One of the bars, thick as my wrist, was bent outwards, warped into a perfect U shape. There were no tire tracks, no signs of a vehicle collision. It looked like something had tried to pry it open with incredible, impossible strength. That's when the unease really set in. This wasn't just a weird animal. Something was wrong. I started spending my evenings online, falling down rabbit holes of local folklore and strange sightings. I typed in large animal, Wisconsin, strange howl, and that's when I found it. The Dogman. The name itself sounded like something out of a cheap horror movie, but the more I read, the less I wanted to laugh. Page after page of stories witness accounts from people all over the state, all over the Midwest, describing the same thing. A 7-foot-tall, bipedal creature with the body of a man and the head of a wolf or a large canine. They described its glowing amber eyes, its immense strength, and that chilling guttural howl I now knew all too well. Many of the stories centered around Bray Road in Elkhorn, not too far from me. People had been reporting sightings there for decades. Cars chased off the road, strange figures seen darting into the cornfields. It was considered one of the biggest hotspots in the country. Then I stumbled upon something that made my blood run cold. The Gable film. It was grainy. Old footage from the 1970s, supposedly shot in Michigan. It showed a group of people having fun, and then, in the background, a large, dark figure lurches out of the woods. It runs on 2 legs for a moment before dropping to all 4s and sprinting away with unnatural speed. It was blurry, shaky, and probably a hoax, but watching it, seeing the way it moved, it felt chillingly familiar. The stories, the accounts, the bent iron gate, it all started to paint a terrifying picture. I tried to rationalize it. It's a bear, I told myself. A big, mangy bear walking on its hind legs. But a bear couldn't bend solid iron like that. A bear doesn't howl like that. The explanations felt thin, like trying to patch a hole in a dam with a piece of tape. The fear was seeping in, and the nights became the worst part. Every creak of the old farmhouse, every rustle of leaves outside, sent a jolt of adrenaline through me. I started triple-checking the locks, leaving all the outside lights on, and keeping Gus inside with me after sunset. My peaceful sanctuary had become a prison of my own making. I felt like I was being watched, hunted. A couple of weeks ago, it happened. It was late, well after midnight. A storm had just rolled through, and the air was thick and heavy. Gus started barking frantically at the back door, a deep, aggressive bark I'd never heard from him before. My heart pounded in my chest. I grabbed the heaviest flashlight I owned and crept toward the glass pane on the door. I told myself it was just a raccoon, a stray cat. I peered out into the darkness, my flashlight beam cutting a shaky path across the wet yard. And then I saw it. It was only for a second, a fleeting glimpse at the far edge of the woods, right where the light barely reached. It wasn't clear. It was a silhouette, a hulking, dark shape against the blackness of the trees. It was tall, much taller than a man, and broad. As my light hit it, it turned its head. I couldn't see a face, no details, but I saw the brief, unmistakable glint of two eyes shining a bright, coppery amber in the beam of my light. Then, in an instant, it was gone. It didn't run, it just vanished back into the shadows of the forest, as if the darkness itself had swallowed it whole. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, frozen, the flashlight shaking in my hand. Gus was still going crazy behind me. I didn't see a dog. I didn't see a bear. I don't know what I saw. But it was big, it was fast, and it wasn't supposed to be there. I haven't heard the howl since that night. The woods are still quiet, but it's a different kind of quiet now. It's not an empty quiet. It's a waiting quiet. I don't go hiking in the woods anymore. I don't stay out after dark. I still live on my grandpa's farm in the house I love, but I feel like a guest now, a trespasser. I no longer believe that monsters are just stories. I believe there are things in this world hiding in the deep, dark corners that we don't understand. Things that have been here long before us and will be here long after we're gone. I don't know if it's called the Dogman or if it has a name at all. All I know is that it's out there, and sometimes on the darkest nights I feel like it's watching me, waiting. And that's a thought more terrifying than any campfire story I've ever heard. Thanks for listening to our story. If you've had a similar experience, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more adventures into the unknown. Stay safe out there.